Story 1. The night enveloped the small town in a shroud of darkness, the air thick with an unsettling stillness that seemed to linger in the shadows. In the heart of the town stood an old, decrepit building, its facade adorned with intricate but weathered architectural details. The townspeople avoided it, whispering tales of inexplicable occurrences that plagued the structure. Yet, despite the warnings, 4 friends, Lily, Max, Emily, and Alex, found themselves drawn to its ominous presence, their curiosity overshadowing their apprehension. Lily, the most adventurous of the group, led the way, her steps faltering as she approached the building's foreboding entrance. Max, the skeptic, scoffed at the tales woven by the townsfolk, dismissing them as mere superstitions. "There's no such thing as ghosts or hauntings. It's all in their minds," Max declared, his voice echoing through the desolate streets. But even his bravado wavered as they stepped into the darkness of the abandoned building, their flashlights casting eerie shadows that danced on the decaying walls. The air was stale, heavy with the scent of dust and neglect, and a chill crept through the corridors, sending shivers down their spines. As they explored the labyrinthine corridors, a sense of foreboding settled over them, the faint sound of whispering voices seemingly carried on the frigid drafts that swept through the halls. Emily's hand tightened around her flashlight, her breath hitching as she glimpsed fleeting shadows that seemed to dart just beyond the reach of their flickering beams. "Did you see that?" she whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and intrigue. Alex's gaze swept the darkness, his instincts urging him to tread with caution. "There's something not right about this place. We should turn back." But Lily's curiosity propelled her forward, her resolve unyielding in the face of the encroaching darkness. With each step deeper into the belly of the building, the shadows seemed to thicken, coalescing into an oppressive force that weighed on their spirits and clouded their senses. Amidst the labyrinth of corridors, they stumbled upon an ancient room, its walls adorned with faded tapestries and tattered paintings. At the center of the room lay an ornate pedestal, its surface gleaming with an otherworldly luminescence that cast an ethereal glow on the surrounding artifacts. Intrigued, they approached the pedestal, their breaths held in anticipation. As they reached out to touch the pedestal, a sudden gust of wind extinguished their flashlights, plunging them into an impenetrable darkness. Panic seized their hearts, and in the pitch-black void, a haunting melody emerged, its melancholic notes weaving a tapestry of despair and longing. The room illuminated with a spectral light, revealing intricate patterns etched into the pedestal, each symbol pulsating with an otherworldly energy that seemed to beckon to them from beyond the veil of reality. Lily traced the symbols with a hesitant touch, her fingertips tingling with a strange familiarity that both unnerved and enticed her. As she delved deeper into the mysteries of the pedestal, a surge of memories flooded her mind, each vision a fragment of a forgotten past that had been buried beneath layers of time and secrecy. The room quivered with an unearthly energy, and from the shadows emerged a spectral figure, its form contorted with an ancient sorrow that transcended the boundaries of the living and the dead. "We shouldn't have come here," Max murmured, his voice barely audible above the haunting melody that reverberated through the room. But their retreat was cut off, the room morphing into an endless expanse that trapped them within the grasp of the spectral entity. The figure's mournful wails pierced through their consciousness, its anguished plea intertwining with the melody that seemed to seep into their very souls. In a frenzy, they sought to escape, their voices lost in the cacophony of despair and terror that encased them in a suffocating embrace. The room pulsed with an otherworldly resonance, its walls undulating with a maelstrom of emotions that transcended the boundaries of human comprehension. With a surge of willpower, Lily focused on the symbols etched into the pedestal, channeling the remnants of her forgotten past into a barrier of light that repelled the spectral entity and banished the haunting melody back into the shadows. As the room returned to its dilapidated state, the friends stumbled out into the night, their bodies trembling and their minds reeling from the inexplicable encounter. In the wake of their harrowing ordeal, they parted ways, haunted by the knowledge that some mysteries were better left buried in the darkness of the forgotten past. The building remained an enigma, its secrets concealed within the depths of its ancient walls, a testament to the enduring power of the unknown and the shadows that lingered in the darkest recesses of the human psyche. Story 2. The dilapidated asylum loomed before them, its towering structure casting long shadows in the moonlight. Emily shivered, pulling her jacket tighter around her. "Are you sure we should be doing this?" she whispered, her voice barely audible above the rustling of leaves in the wind. Chris flashed her a mischievous grin, his eyes glinting with excitement. "Come on, Em. This is what we've been waiting for all Halloween. A real creepy adventure. Just think of the stories we'll have to tell." Reluctantly, Emily followed as Chris led the way, his flashlight cutting through the darkness like a beacon. They had heard the tales about the asylum, how it had been shut down decades ago due to unspeakable horrors that had occurred within its walls. Rumors of ghostly apparitions and unexplained phenomena had spread through the town like wildfire, igniting the curiosity of adventurous teenagers like themselves. The door creaked open with an eerie groan, revealing a yawning black void within. The musty smell of decay assaulted their senses, and Emily felt her stomach churn. "I don't have a good feeling about this, Chris," she whispered, her voice tinged with anxiety. Chris chuckled, trying to mask his own unease. "Don't be such a scaredy cat. It's just an old building. Nothing to be afraid of." But as they ventured deeper into the asylum, Emily couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Shadows seemed to dance at the edges of her vision, and every step echoed like a thunderclap in the silence. A cold breeze brushed against her skin, raising goosebumps on her arms. "Chris, did you hear that?" Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Hear what?" Chris replied, turning to look at her with furrowed brows. But before Emily could respond, a distant sound reached her ears. It was a soft, rhythmic tapping, as if someone was walking on the floor above them. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end, and she grabbed Chris's arm, her fingers digging into his flesh. "We need to leave, now," she urged, her voice urgent. Chris frowned, but the tapping grew louder, more pronounced, as if it was getting closer. His bravado wavered, and he nodded in agreement. They turned to leave, but the door slammed shut with a resounding bang, trapping them inside. Panic surged through Emily, her heart pounding in her chest. "Chris, what's happening? Why won't the door open?" she shrieked, her voice tinged with hysteria. Chris tried the handle, but it remained stubbornly locked. "I don't know. It was fine a moment ago. Maybe it's just stuck. We'll find another way out." Their flashlights flickered, casting erratic shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. The tapping sound continued, now accompanied by whispers that seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves. Emily's breath caught in her throat, and she clung to Chris, her body trembling with fear. "We need to find another exit," Chris said, his voice strained. He led the way down a dimly lit corridor, their footsteps echoing in the empty space. The air grew thicker, and a foul stench permeated their senses, making Emily gag. As they rounded a corner, they came face to face with a ghastly sight. A figure stood at the end of the hallway, its back turned to them. Its tattered clothing hung from its emaciated frame, and its head lolled to one side, as if barely attached to its shoulders. Chris gasped, frozen in place, as the figure slowly turned to reveal hollow eye sockets and a gaping maw that seemed to stretch impossibly wide. Emily screamed, her voice reverberating through the corridors, and the figure shuffled toward them with an unnatural gait. Chris grabbed Emily's hand, and they fled in the opposite direction, their hearts thundering in their chests. The whispers grew louder, filling the air with unintelligible murmurs that seemed to mock their attempts to escape. They stumbled into a room, their breath coming in ragged gasps. Emily's eyes widened in terror as she took in the scene before her. Rusty surgical instruments lay scattered across a blood-stained table, and a flickering light cast ghastly shadows on the walls. The tapping sound had intensified, reverberating through the room like a macabre heartbeat. "We shouldn't have come here, Chris," Emily sobbed, her voice breaking. Chris nodded, his own fear palpable. "I know, Em. I'm sorry. We just need to find a way out. We'll stick together." But their resolve wavered as the room seemed to warp and twist around them. The walls closed in, and the ceiling descended with a menacing creak. Emily's vision blurred, and she felt a sense of dread seep into her bones. Something sinister lurked in the darkness, something ancient and malevolent that hungered for their souls. A low, guttural growl reverberated through the room, and Chris stumbled backward, his eyes wide with terror. A pair of glowing orbs materialized in the darkness, fixated on them with an intensity that sent chills down their spines. The figure from before emerged from the shadows, its ghoulish visage contorted into a grotesque grin. Emily and Chris screamed in unison, their voices melding with the cacophony of whispers and the relentless tapping that echoed through the asylum. The figure advanced, its outstretched arms reaching for them, its bony fingers curling into talons. They had stumbled into a realm of nightmares, a place where the line between the living and the dead had blurred beyond recognition. In a desperate bid for escape, Emily and Chris turned and fled, their footsteps pounding against the decaying floor. They raced through the labyrinthine corridors, their lungs burning with exertion, their minds consumed by primal fear. But the asylum seemed to shift around them, leading them in endless circles, trapping them within its malevolent grasp. As their flashlights flickered and died, they found themselves in complete darkness, the only sound their frantic breathing and the relentless tapping that followed them like a sinister omen. With each step, they felt the oppressive weight of the asylum pressing down on them, threatening to consume them whole. In a final burst of desperation, they burst through a set of double doors and stumbled out into the night, gasping for air. The asylum loomed behind them, a dark silhouette against the moonlit sky. Emily collapsed to her knees, tears streaming down her face, her body racked with sobs. "We made it out," Chris whispered, his voice barely audible over the pounding of his heart. But as they looked back at the asylum, they saw the figure watching them from an upper window, its glowing eyes fixed on them with an insatiable hunger. And in that moment, Emily knew they had not escaped the horrors of the asylum. They had merely scratched the surface of an evil that lingered, waiting to ensnare unsuspecting souls in its eternal grip. And as they made their way back to town, the whispers followed them, a haunting melody that echoed in their minds. A reminder of the darkness that lurked just beyond the veil of reality. Emily and Chris never spoke of their harrowing encounter, but the asylum remained etched in their memories, a chilling reminder of the terrors that could not be easily forgotten. Story 3. Amelia and Jacob ventured into the dense forest, their backpacks laden with camping gear. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that seemed to reach out and ensnare them. They had heard about the haunted cabin nestled deep within the woods, a place where hikers had vanished without a trace. But their curiosity outweighed their apprehension, and they pressed on, determined to uncover the truth. The air grew colder as they approached the cabin, its weathered exterior exuding an ominous aura. The door hung ajar, creaking softly in the breeze. Amelia's heart hammered in her chest, and she reached for Jacob's hand, seeking comfort in the face of impending dread. "We shouldn't be here, Jake," she murmured, her voice tinged with uncertainty. Jacob squeezed her hand, his eyes gleaming with a mix of excitement and trepidation. "We've come this far, Ames. Let's just take a quick look inside. We'll be fine." But as they crossed the threshold, a frigid gust of wind extinguished their lantern, plunging them into darkness. Amelia's breath caught in her throat, and she fumbled for her flashlight, her hands trembling with fear. When the beam flickered to life, they found themselves in a decrepit living room, cobwebs hanging from the ceiling like macabre tapestries. A faint whisper drifted through the air, and Amelia's blood ran cold. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Jacob nodded, his expression tense. "Yeah, let's just check the place quickly and get out of here." As they ventured deeper into the cabin, the whispering grew louder, weaving through the air like a spectral symphony. Shadows danced on the walls, and the floorboards creaked beneath their feet. Amelia's instincts screamed at her to flee, but a morbid fascination held her in place, compelling her to unravel the secrets that lay dormant within the cabin's walls. In a back room, they stumbled upon an old journal, its pages yellowed with age. Amelia gingerly opened it, her eyes scanning the faded script that spoke of unspeakable rituals and the summoning of otherworldly entities. A chill swept through the room, and the walls seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. "We need to leave now, Jake," Amelia urged, her voice tinged with urgency. But as they turned to go, a ghastly figure materialized before them, its translucent form contorted into a grotesque visage. Amelia stifled a scream, her body frozen with terror. The figure beckoned to them with spectral hands, its eyes burning with an otherworldly fire. Jacob's grip tightened on Amelia's hand, and they fled through the cabin, their footsteps echoing in the empty space. The whispers rose to a deafening crescendo, drowning out their panicked breaths and the thundering of their hearts. The cabin seemed to warp and twist around them, its walls closing in with malicious intent. In a final surge of desperation, they burst through the front door and into the night, their lungs burning with exertion. The cabin loomed behind them, an ominous silhouette against the starlit sky. Amelia collapsed to her knees, her body trembling with residual fear. "We should have listened," she gasped, her voice hoarse. Jacob nodded, his face drained of color. "We're lucky to be alive. Let's never come back here again." As they made their way back through the forest, the whispers followed them, a haunting reminder of the darkness that lurked within the heart of the haunted cabin. Amelia and Jacob never spoke of their harrowing encounter, but the memory of the spectral figure remained etched in their minds, a chilling testament to the horrors that awaited those who dared to tread too close to the realm of the unknown.